If you're just joining us, this is the World News Report on CRTV News. We now examine key takeaways from COP30 in Belém, a summit that shifted global climate politics towards implementation platforms, finance roadmaps, and just transition mechanism. For Africa, these changes bring both opportunities and risk, especially as the push continues for energy access to be recognized as a climate goal. So joining us is Eugene Fongwa, Director of Programs and Research at the African Coalition for Sustainable Energy and Access, fresh from Belém, and author of an analysis how the global climate regime changed after the Belém COP, recently published on his LinkedIn profile. Now, hello, Eugene. It is a pleasure to have you once again with us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be back. I'm glad we're talking about what Belém really changed for Africa.
Now, in your recent write-up, you argue that COP30 did not rewrite climate rules, but quietly shifted power away from negotiations and towards implementation platforms and finance roadmaps for the ordinary African following the news right now. What does this shift actually mean? Are we moving into a climate regime where outcomes depend less on UN text and more on who controls capital?
It means the center of gravity is moving from big speeches to the nuts and bolts of delivery. Outcomes will hinge less on wording in the UN decisions and more on who can turn plans into funded projects. For example, grids, clean cooking, resilient farms, jobs, etc. In practice, power follows capital, so Africa must fight not only for fair text, but for a bigger, cheaper slice of finance and the right rules to get investments flowing to communities, not just boardrooms.
Now, it is no news that COP30 did not commit to phasing out fossil fuels and disappointing many. So, from your perspective, is this a major setback or a political reality?
It's both. It's a mixed signal for markets, but it reflects political reality. The path forward is to outcompete fossil fuels by accelerating renewables, efficiency, and storage, while securing a narrowly defined time-bound role for gas, where it displaces dirtier fuels and anchors industrialization. The test is whether countries use the new just transition tools to plan, protect workers, and retire high-emitting assets faster.
And of course, we know Africa receives only a small share of needed climate finance. With COP30 news, with the COP30's new targets and timelines, how concerned should Africa be, and what must it do now to shape the rules?
Africa should be concerned but not paralyzed. Targets without terms won't change lives. Africa should therefore move on three fronts, I think. The first is to set the terms. They need to push for grant instruments, debt relief, and guarantees that cut the cost of capital. The second is to own the pipeline, and this requires that we table bankable country platforms, transmissions, distributed solar, clean cooking, climate smart agriculture, so money has somewhere credible to land. Thirdly, we need to shape the metrics. We need to lock in rules for new finance goals that prioritize vulnerability. Population and development co-benefit, not just tons of carbon.
Now, going back to your participation at the COP30 in Brazil, your coalition has long argued that energy access should be recognized as a global climate goal. Now, after the outcomes in Belém with the launch of just transition mechanisms, new implementation clubs and country platforms, do you believe Africa now has a stronger entry point to advance this agenda, or did the lack of fossil fuel commitments make the task even more difficult.
Yes, the Just Transition Mechanism and implementation clubs give Africa new doors to walk through. They let us argue, practically, not just morally, that closing the access gap, 630 million Africans still lack electricity, is climate action when it replaces diesel, charcoal, and deforestation with clean power and clean cooking. The absence of a fossil fuel phase-out makes the politics harder, but it also increases the premium on credible African plans that marry access, renewables, limited transition gas, and jobs. If we lead with solutions, we can set the agenda.
So before you take a leave of us, given where COP30 left off, especially on finance and fossil fuels, what should Africa realistically expect or push for at the next climate conference? Now, what would progress look like for you?
3 deliverables, I think. The first is finance that one can use. And this means concrete commitments on concessional capital, guarantees and debt swaps, early disbursements of adaptation and loss and damage windows serving African states. The second is implementation wins, that is recognition of energy access as a core transition outcome. An AU-backed country platform admitted into the new accelerators with named projects and timelines. There's also need for a just transition roadmap, which is Africa-defined plans linking renewables, targeted gas, grid skills, and social protection, plus a framework to retire the dirtiest assets first. Progress looks like signed term sheets, not just stronger verbs in a decision text.
Well, thank you very much, Eugene Fongwa, for joining us and helping us understand what COP30 means for Africa's climate and development agenda. Thank you. Let's now have a recap of our top stories. ECOWAS ended its mediation mission